Hello Dream Theater fans, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Let's Learn Falling into Infinity Guitar and Analysis series. Today we will aim to feel zero regrets as we unfold the story that John Petrucci, John Myung, Mike Portnoy, Derek Sherinian, and of course everyone's favorite Canadian diplomat, Kevin James Labrie, has presented to us. Now, although it is a sad story of routine hysteria occurring at midnight in the South American nation of Peru, I have some solace to add to the situation. Through every single note, every single time change, every single chord progression, and a full, detailed musical analysis of Peruvian Skies by Dream Theater. Peruvian Skies is what I would consider a souped-up pop song, or a pop song plus, one that a band only at the caliber of Dream Theater could deliver. It has all of the elements of a classic DT track, with almost 2 minutes of instrumentals thrown into the middle of it, but it never seems to stray too far away from the original idea. Instead of blasting through key change after key change and time change after time change like they usually do, the idea, the composition, remains incredibly concise, revolving mainly around 2 very catchy lyrical ideas. The other reason I refer to this as a souped-up pop song is because of how lush and layered the instrumentation is. For example, this song features a total of 9 different guitars. And that includes number 1, a clean guitar with a light phaser effect and delay, a 6-string acoustic acting as a double to that, a 12-string acoustic adding some nice chimey arpeggios and strumming patterns, 2 slide leads that would make David Gilmour of Pink Floyd very proud, and also a harmony to that slide lead, a crunchy wah guitar that's cast off in the background for ambient effect, a standard heavy rhythm guitar for those nice Metallica-inspired moments. Yeah! There's the solo, which is one of my all-time favorites from Mr. Petrucci. There's also a hidden 7-string in there as well, which we will go over. In addition to all of that, we also have John Myung playing a fretless bass for the entirety of the song, and we have Derek Sherinian on a multitude of keyboards, including even a mellotron. Well, let's get into that first guitar part that starts off the entire song. It is an electric guitar playing doubled with an acoustic guitar. Listen up. A beautiful sound palette is created using those 2 guitars. The phaser on the electric guitar kind of gives it a more bubbly effect, while the acoustic helps to reinforce the percussive transients that occur within the riff. And here's the riff nice and slow. Ready? It's almost like if Enter Sandman went to college, got his degree, and wasn't a ragamuffin at the dirt factory. Let's go over the fingers first because it's actually kind of tricky to play if you don't use the proper fingering. So here it is. You want to use your middle and your pinky for that initial hammer-on, just like this. Watch. So your middle finger is going to be on the 2nd fret. 2nd finger, 2nd fret at all times. So your first finger, your index finger, can grab the first finger, or not the first finger, the first fret of the A string, and then return back. Okay? So once again, watch. Makes sense when you put it that way. And the next measure, you want to do this. You can go to using your pointer and ring for that one because it doesn't quite matter as much. You don't need to grab that first fret in that instance. We then come back to that first measure again, but this time we hit a nice chromatic riff, alright? So that's using the 2nd, 4th, and 3rd frets, and then the 2nd, 1st on the E string, back up to the 2nd on the A. So kind of a disjointed feeling, and we'll get into the theory behind this, but real slow. pretty much how it's done. It's slid down on that second to first fret like this. Now, I've seen him play it live. That is how he does it, but it doesn't matter. You can play it like this as well. I like to play it with the middle and the pointer. You'll see me do that multiple times throughout the playthrough, but whatever way is most comfortable, really. Moving beyond that, we have the first two variations of the riff repeating. Once again, then here we have this. Alright, so that's going down into this F position, playing an F power chord, but arpeggiating it, but also letting the open G ring out on top. You want to keep the G ringing out the entire time you're playing that F chord. Now this is what I was saying. This makes it feel like it's in an alternate time signature, but it's actually not. We're still in 4/4. We're just on the and of beat 3 before we continue on. Watch, ready? 1. It's all in 4/4 the entire way through. Okay, cool. So that's a lot of the rhythmic stuff, and also that open G string. I must reiterate, just like we did with that F chord, we have to do it for the beginning as well. Watch. That G has to ring out the entire time until you hit the next measure. Then you can stop it. Hear how that open G is the entire time ringing through. Alright, you got to do that for the F as well. But once you hit those moving parts, you don't have to worry about letting it ring out as much. Now let's talk about the theory behind this. E minor is the dominating chord. Alright, even though we do hit some other things, E is almost always in the background with one exception, and we'll get to that. But we're hitting this. You can consider that all to just be E minor, but since we have a B hammering into a C sharp, that hits the natural 6, which is what? The Dorian mode, right? So that C sharp in there gives it that very ominous sound. It's not quite an emotional sound, it's not quite a dark or deep sound. I guess it's kind of deep, it does have depth, but it sounds very ominous to me. As opposed to if you played it with a flat 6, it'll sound a lot darker, a lot more emotional, a lot deeper. The flat 6, that's the Aeolian mode. Here, I'm going to play the riff as if it was in the Aeolian mode, watch. It just doesn't sound good, by the way. And maybe if you played that first part it would, watch. That would be nice if you just kept it like that, but you can't put all the other crazy stuff and make it make sense if you do that. Now, the other thing that happens is we hit the B flat. That's your tritone, your flatted 5th. Now, what I'm going to ultimately say is that this is just a blues, alright? In the style of Enter Sandman, right? It's like a Dorian blues. So, like I said before, Enter Sandman, Going to College, that's that entire chord. And you have the natural 5th and the flatted 5th at the same time. So you have that little opposite resolution happening. The second measure just goes up to an A, alright? Now an A major chord, which is kind of what's happening on top of an E, and then with that nice bleed down back into it, yeah, that's basically what it's doing. The major 4 chord on top of the minor is the Dorian mode. So A major and E minor, that basically represents a 2-5 in any normal progression. But here, consider it a 1-4, but I'm still just going to consider this E minor, just with that A touching melodically on top to let it move back. So you're really not moving away from E minor at all. The chromatic portion is where things get pretty interesting because we're actually mixing the modes together. Check this out, look. That's Dorian, but then we immediately go to Aeolian, which is the flatted 6. So we're hitting 5, natural 6, flatted 6. So this is like the James Bond theme, but in opposite order. Doesn't sound as good when you play it like that, but this is a totally different song. Alright, so that's on top of the E. Now this C anticipates going down to the F. So that's how we make F make sense in this whole progression. Watch. Eventually it does resolve down to that. And that F sharp is within the key of E minor, which then comes down to the F, and then right up to a B, which connects the F to the E. Alright, so it's basically just the E being connected to the F bone and the F bone connected to the E bone. Alright, so that's what it's all about. And that F chord is placed oh so smoothly right in the middle there. Now that open G on top of the F creates an F add 9. Alright, so that G is a part of an E minor chord, but it's also part of this F chord. So once again, we're using common tones to connect the two chords or the two ideas together. Now in this case, the F is going to be the flatted 2, even though technically the F is coming from the key of A minor. It's really the flat 6 of the A minor scale. In this case, we're going right back to E. So we have to call it the flatted 2 because it's not going to A minor, it's going to E. This intro perfectly illustrates 3 different tonalities that are occurring at the same time, basically. E Dorian with that blues, so maybe technically there's 4 tonalities. The Aeolian, because we're going to that C natural, and then the flatted 2, which is technically the Phrygian mode, and because of that B, it's almost like an F Lydian, going back into the E minor once again. So very smooth transitions between really 4 different tonalities, we're going to say. Once the drums and bass enter, we also see a spacey synthesizer lead up top, played by Derek Sherinian. Chief Sherinian stares atop the uncanny valley, gazing into the deep fog beneath the moonlit night. In all honesty, this does remind me of some sacred Native American animal call. And I've heard that if this melody is played enough times, John Mayung will show up to your doorstep with a loot crate and a bottle of piss. Now, speaking of piss, this final note is the bluesiest note you could possibly have played. It's the same B flat found in the guitar part, but we're up in a higher octave, and it's more reminiscent of something a grunge guitarist would play, like Billy Corgan or Kim Thayil, but it's a keyboardist in a progressive metal band. Here. When you hold that B flat off into the distance, it gives it that ominous feel, but it also just sounds like a guitar bending a blues note, which is kind of cool. And it always seemed like this album in particular was a plea to keep grunge alive, as we entered the post-grunge period of 1997. Let's get the keys one more time in context with the guitar. In addition to Derek's wild animal call, we also have a 12-string guitar that enters that gives it a little more color. It acts as a coloring agent to the other 2 guitar parts. Listen to how it sounds. It's a relatively simple part, but must be played exactly to have the desired effect. This part mimics the first 5 notes that are played in the riff below. Sound familiar? It just sounds more chimey and nice because it's on a 12-string guitar. And there it stops, comes back. Very nice. I think it sounds great. And then the very final chord is actually very interesting because we go from the C sharp on the 2nd fret, which by the way is the Dorian sound, right to a C natural, which is the flatted 6. So we do hit the Aeolian note right there, but the other guitar is playing an F. So this is within the context of that chord. So this is basically a G and a C being played together. That's the 9th and the 5th of the F chord. Alright? One more time through this whole thing just to get the sound through our heads. Right? Really ominous. Majestic almost. But a dark majesty. Pretty cool. Let it ring as well. Just acts as a coloring agent to the main riff. For the next part, we drop the 12 string and get back to basics with the previous two guitars, doubling each other, of course. Coming into the verse section, we have a much more sparse version of the intro riff. And I'll go through these variations as we move through the riff. Check this out. We have variation A. Very simple. We hold out that open G on top of the chord. Variation B looks like this. Add in a little extra drop down. So we're filling in the second half. Same thing with variation C. In the second half with this arpeggio, just adding a little bit more on top of the original voicing. We then hit up variation D, which looks like this, a lot like variation B, but a more busy second half. So we're still filling it in, but it's even less sparse. Nice eighth notes thrown into the mix. Coming around on the second half, we have another variation. Watch this, ready? It's basically variation A, but with an added note, 12th fret diving back down into the open position once again. Okay? Then we come back to this. This is variation B. So that's coming back. Variation C. And then once again, variation D. Boom. As we go right into the chorus part. Now before we hit the chorus part, let's take a look at the theoretical breakdown here. Variation A, like I said, is just this shape, which is the E Dorian shape being held out through the stretch of two measures, okay? Very spacious, and as we know, that's uncharacteristic of Dream Theater. But, hey, it's pretty cool. I like it when they take a break. They give us a break as well when they do that. Variation B, we add the extra note, but then this extra cadence at the end as well, which is a G and a D over an F sharp. So we use the G and the F sharp to get back down, while adding the D on top to give us a chord. This is going to be the flat 3 chord, going to the flat 7th chord in first inversion, so flat 7, 6, back to E minor. Okay, now the second time we come back to this though, it's still Dorian, but we're doing a mega Dorian here. With a nice syncopated like type of thing. We're actually landing on the downbeat, but then every single other note is on the upbeat. Now these notes here, like I said, still Dorian. The 5th fret right there is a flatted 3rd, that's a G. C sharp, that's the natural 6. B, that's the 5th, and E, that's the root. All the notes that we need to create that Dorian sound. So pretty good usage. The last variation of the first half, variation D, goes like this. Just kind of a way to cap it off and make the first half a little more interesting in the second half. So we're still borrowing from that G chord shape and the D over F sharp shape, but we're using different notes. Here we're doing the full G triad, and then right into this, something that's more like an F sharp chord. I'm going to say this is an F sharp 7 with a sus4, or an F sharp minor 7 with a sus4, because you have an F sharp, which is the root, a B, which is the 4th, and an E, which is the flatted 7th. So with that, you get a nice chordal voicing, which means we have perfect 4ths stacked to create that sound. So G, F sharp minor 7, sus4. Coming around to the second half, variation E, all E Dorian, even this. That could be E minor, could be E Dorian, could be E Phrygian, could be any type of E minor tonality, okay? But it just sounds cool, especially with the delay effect that goes, that actually sounds pretty cool. We roll back along to variation B. So we're subtracting a bunch of variations from E here, watch. That's the same, okay? G to a D over F sharp, flat 3 to flat 7. Nothing to see here. Then we got this. Once again, the Mega Dorian to go here. With that drop down, which then goes right into the chorus part, which is now in the key of A minor. Another interesting part about this verse is that it completely ignores the F that comes in toward the end, as well as that busy chromatic line that also goes to F. So it's completely destroying the F parts and the busyness in favor of a monotonality, which basically means we're in E Dorian the entire time, and also in favor of a less busy, more spacious verse idea. This allows James LaBrie's vocal melody to sing a little bit more easily atop that line. Check this out. There it is. It's so simple, so flowy, so it needs something on the bottom to be just as simple and flowy, to let those words shine through. Now, what's also ironic about this is, this reminds me of Nirvana's Come As You Are. You know the song. Come as you are, right? We all know the song, but slow it down. Watch this. Here's Nirvana's Come As You Are within Dream Theater's Peruvian Skies. Watch. Come as you are. It's kind of funny. Maybe it's not that funny, but I think it's funny. Very similar in nature, and I think the idea is just that it's a simple line, so it deserves something simple underneath rather than something complicated like a Neapolitan flat 2 in the key of E minor. That's putting it a little bit too far there, especially for the Kurt Cobain lovers. One much less noticeable thing in this verse is John Mayung's fretless bass slide, which comes in hot like this. I didn't realize this was a Pearl Jam song. To be honest, I was surprised to hear something so flagrant coming from John Mayung here, especially on such a moody and atmospheric song. But I guess a nice simulation of seasickness bodes well in the verse's very liquid tonality. Here it is in context. Now excuse me while I go throw up. Halfway through the verse, John Petrucci comes in with a rarity, a slide guitar, to make this already atmospheric part even more atmospheric within the atmosphere. Let's listen to it. Now you're going to want to get your guitar slide out. Mine's an Ariel Posen signature slide, which goes right on the pinky, fits very nice and snug. But you can use any number of household objects as well. Bottles, lighters, Zippo lighters, they work pretty well. Just anything small enough to make that slide effect occur. Okay, so what we're going to do is put on our best Duane Allman impressions, and we're going to hit right into these notes. You also want to put a little bit of echo or delay sauce on this, but I'm just going to play it somewhat dry for you. I'll have a little bit of reverb on, but here are the parts slowly. We're going from the 7th to the 9th fret, just like this. Just coming right in. Now notice, I'm coming in right on beat 1 for that second note, and this is going to be something that repeats itself throughout the course of this lead. Watch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So that change of note is right on beat 1. That's going to happen almost every single time. So from that 9th fret, we're going to be coming down almost to the 7th, but bypass it. Then we're going to accent the 3rd fret, and then come into the 2nd fret, not the 2nd fret, the 4th fret for the F sharp. Now that's the 9th. I meant to say that's the 2nd of the chord, the E minor. So watch, ready? 5, 4, and of course a very similar rhythmic projection coming on. And then here, watch, we're going to slide all the way up to the 12th. And then slide down to the 7th fret, and we're going to hit that 7th fret right on the downbeat as well. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. 1. See how I'm always hitting that beat 3 or around beat 3. Then the next note is always on beat 1. This one's the greatest example of that. Watch. 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, boom! And then back to beat 1 once again. So that's the rhythmic motif of this, all right? This slide comes in on the second half of the verse to make it a little more interesting as we go along. Like I said, a lot of layering in this song. We're adding yet another guitar on top of what we're doing. So we have 3 guitars going simultaneously during this part. All of these notes exist within the key of E minor, but we're going to dive a little bit deeper than just that. Here's the sound of the E minor tonality for reference. The first 2 notes outline the 4th and the 5th of the E minor. The second descending bit comes down to the 9th, which is a very colorful chord tone reminiscent of Pink Floyd. Welcome, my son, welcome to Peru. That's that 9th on top of that, don't you forget it. The next high slide goes up to the 5th, and then to the root. And to me is the defining melodic bit which really ties this verse together. This then comes back down to the 5 into an interesting resolution. This is the 4th coming down to the root. Usually we use the 4th to resolve down to some sort of 3rd. In this case it would be a minor 3rd, or in a major context, down a half step to a major 3rd. That 4th is typically used to move down a step, alright? Or up a step to the 5th. More or less using steps to resolve it rather than a full 4th, which is happening right here, which is like falling down a half a flight of stairs. And to wrap this up, we come into the 12th fret of the E string, which is a familiar note, but the chord changes underneath so it alters its function. The chord is A minor, and the E up top is the 5th. There's also a harmony that comes in on the second half of this slide lead. So let's get that slide back on and get to these higher registers. Now check this out. We're going all the way up to the 17th fret of the B string, way up here. And you're basically playing on top of that 12th fret thing we played before. Here's the original one. And then we go up here. So those are perfect 4th harmonies on top, giving it a very metallic sound, almost like the Power Rangers soundtrack. One more time, all the way up to the 17th fret. Pretty cool. But then we have to hit this. Watch this. We're coming down to the 14th fret, which is a C sharp, down to a G at the 8th fret. Now, first of all, this is a tritone jump, okay? That's what it sounds like, but we're using the slide, so we're going down an even further half flight of stairs, like we're falling down a massive flight of endless stairs. But C sharp to G, that's a tritone, but it's also the Dorian interval and the Dorian harmony on top of the other one, which we'll get into in a little bit, right? Now beyond that, we actually slide down and we're going to end at the 13th fret right there. This harmony lead reinforces that this part is meant to be heard and not just cast into the background to Labrie's vocals. The top note represents the 4th moving to the root, which we saw in the lower part, which will occur in the next measure. Foreshadowing much? Let's get to the next resolution. This is a really cool motion. A C sharp to a G, which is the interval of a tritone like I mentioned before. When we put the C sharp and the G on top, that's what it sounds like. Not only is this interval uncommon, it is also uncommon for a tritone to sound so nice and pretty. Usually it's pretty ugly sounding. Remember, it is the devil's interval. Final resolution takes us into the chorus section, which, like I mentioned before, starts on an A minor, which is made obvious in the harmony. Check this out. A minor chord with that on top. Instead of the C sharp that we've used to create the Dorian sound, which would also create an A major. We are now using C natural to conform to the chord as we are currently playing on an A minor, which has a C natural as its flatted third. Immediately following the verse comes the chorus section, which has 3 separate guitars playing 3 separate parts. The first of which being a 12-string guitar strumming chords. The second of which being an electric guitar that's phased out, very similar to the intro. And the third guitar being a crunchy wah, meant to be cast in the background as another coloring agent. The first guitar we're going to be covering is the 12-string guitar because that's the bedrock chord progression of this entire section. It uses all easy open chords, and we're also in a timing of 6/8, so that's going to be reflected in the rhythm. It's going to be a 1, 2, and 3, and 4, 5, and 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, instead of 4 like we had before. So let's go over all these chords. We have an A minor chord to start. That's the 4 chord, going to E minor, which is our 1, to G, the flat third or relative major to D, flat 7, going back to 4, A minor, to E minor, that's the 1, G once again, flat third, and then this. Now, what's going on right there? Now, it looks like it's a C sus4 because we have a C, an F, a G, a C, and an F, but really, it's part of an F chord. All right, so it's an F sus2 or an F add 9 over C. But the bass is playing an F, so it's just an F add 9 chord, all right, just with this voicing, and it sounds very nice. Going from the G, which is a whole step away. Perfect. Now, usually the F has been a flat 2 up until this point, but because the next chord in the sequence that we're going to go to is A minor, I'm going to relate it to that instead. Remember, when you're doing an analysis, you always need to think about what's next rather than what the overarching key is at the current moment. Okay, you have to look forward into the future. Use that didactic, psychic mind of yours to get all the way into outer space. Okay? Futuristic outer space. But it's not a flat 2 anymore, it's a flat 6 of the 4 chord because it resolves right back into A minor, which, by the way, is no longer strummed. The 12-string is now playing a series of arpeggios on top of these chords. And this is more of a line cliche, dropping the bass line as we play the same chord on top. Watch, ready? A minor, over G, over F sharp, and then strumming that F to bring it to a close. Alright, so just make sure you got that rhythm right. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. Hold. Alright, and now that F, since we're going to go back to E, is a flatted 2 once again. So just another way of mode mixing, all right? If you're going to put an F chord in an E minor progression, you might as well go to A minor as well because that's where the F chord comes from, and it's the flat 6 of A minor. Accompanying the 12-string guitar is a phased out electric guitar, but with a little more delay and reverb added for some extra bubbliness and, of course, echo. play it slowly and I'll break down the chords as I'm playing it. Here we have an A minor 9 to start, so that goes on top of the A chord. Down to E minor 9. That little lick to a G, D, and this lick, that's a very nice one. We'll go over that in a bit, but we come back down to A minor 9. Strumming the E minor 9 this time, and then nice lick in between to G, a little more active, and then we have this. Alright, so I'll stop it right there. Let's go all the way back to the top. The A minor 9 is going to look like this. We're at the 2nd fret of the D and the 5th fret of the G, and we strum those 5 strings. We don't strum, we have to pluck them, but it's basically an A minor 9 because we have A the root, E the 5th, C is the flatted 3rd, B is the 9th, and E is the 5th. So a very, very nice sound with this rhythm. 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, 6. The same rhythm we saw in that 12-string part, the second half that wasn't strummed. Then we come into the E minor, same deal, E minor 9. Okay, so that's E, that's the root, B is the 5th, F sharp is the 9th, G is the flatted 3rd. We have a very, very nice flatted 2nd in there. Okay, a minor 2nd to give it that nice dissonance, alright, that Pink Floyd sound once again. And the open B string, that's the 5th, which goes into this lick. It's basically 2 slides from the 2nd and 3rd on the G, which is more like a D chord shape, so we're anticipating the D. Pretty cool. It's almost like Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, right? Except only played on the bottom part. So watch that again. 2nd to 3rd going 4th to 5th, then sliding back down, and then pulling off to the open. Okay? And that leads us into the G chord, which is the same rhythm that we saw before on the other chords as well. Just not as fancy. Then we have, that's the first part of this D measure. Right after that, we're going to let the open D ring, and then we're going to go up here. A very, very nice way to outline the D chord. We're basically using all the susses. This is a sus 4 resolving to the 3rd. Okay? Then we have a sus 2 resolving to the root, and then a 6th resolving down to the 5th. Alright, all together, you're basically going up to an E minor chord just above, but separating them all, right? And you want to let some of those ring out nice and tastefully. We come back to the A minor 9 once again. Nothing changes until we hit the E minor, which goes like this. Strum, lick. Alright, and always make sure you get that rhythm right. Strum, lick. Lick. It's basically an E minor pentatonic on top, which is perfect because it's an E minor chord. And then we hit the last G, which is a more busy one. 1, 2, and 3, and 1, and 2, and 3. You want to play that exactly how it is. Watch that again. I'm going to do it slow. Watch. 1, 2, and 3, and bottom. Little hammer, letting it all ring. You especially want that last G string to ring out as well, because that's going to come into the next chord. Watch. F and 9. That's just a nice little syncopated way to play that. Boom, 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 boom. And this guitar continues on to now double the 12 string that was playing this part earlier. And here it is. Ready? It's just a different timbre. Exact same part though. Pretty nice. Finishing off this trio of guitars is an atmospheric wah guitar. So it's basically an overdriven guitar with some wah-wah on it. Delay, reverb. But it uses the resonance of the wah, and the resonance is just when you gradually increase the filtering on it. The wah is basically a filter, so you're using a resonance filter to add this sort of build-up effect onto the chords that are being played. Check out how it sounds. Now usually I wouldn't take the wah out for these demonstrations, but this time I did, because it makes it kind of hard to hear a lot of the notes when I'm trying to demonstrate what's going on. It's just a lot cleaner to do it without it, but in this case it's so integral and critical to the effect that we're trying to achieve that I brought it out for this. The riff is made up of 3 different phases. First, it's a build, a gradual resonance filter on the wah with mutes coming into a chord, nice and strummed and held out, and then a slide out of that chord to repeat the process once again. So let me play this slowly. Ready? 1. Let it go, slide out, builds, back to the original chord. And then by the time we reach the final chord, you're just playing a regular old power chord, no effect there. Now, to achieve this, we need to look at the rhythm, right? So the first rhythm on this is actually a syncopated mute, and it happens on the upstroke. So we're gonna 1, 2, up, 2, and 3, into a G chord. So we're purposefully only hitting the second chord of the progression. This lets the first chord have its day in the sun. And then we have this one, which is even more atmospheric, more lush, and more beautiful. So the more layers you add, the more lush something becomes. So second chord in this progression is more lush than the first one. Nothing really complicated about this. It's just a cool little effect to be cast off into the background. I never knew it was there until I heard the isolated tracks, but now you know it's there as well. The only other part I want to go over in this chorus is the mellotron, the final layer. Pay attention to the dynamic shift that occurs as it reaches the end. It's a very effective way of building up intensity leading into the final chord. And not to mention, the mellotron just sounds frickin' awesome. Beyond the first chorus, we head back into the intro. Been a little while since we've been here. In this part, a keyboard, an additional keyboard, comes into play. And here's what it sounds like. It's an electric piano, but I thought that the first note was actually a guitar. This shows off Derek Sherinian's ability to be a shape-shifting demon from hell. He's pretending to be a guitarist, but he's actually playing a keyboard. Let's get a little more of that electric piano. Kind of bluesy, kind of jazzy, adding yet even more atmosphere. How much atmosphere could we possibly handle beyond this? That electric piano continues on throughout the entire second verse, so we're keeping that atmospheric bed going even harder. So this is going to be by far the most atmospheric verse we've ever heard in our lives. I've never said the word atmosphere so many times in a video before. But in addition to that, we have a guitar variation on the previous verse riff. So let's check those out. Here is a comparison between verse 1 and verse 2. Let's hear the first couple of measures of both verses to see what's happening. Starting with verse 1. These same 2 measures in the second verse add in a 12 fret harmonic, where there was just empty space earlier on. Now let's check out how to play that. Very simple, we just start off with the same thing, second to fourth hammer with the open G string, and then we come all the way up an octave with a harmonic. 12th on the G, 12th on the B, that's the flatted third and the 5th of the E minor chord. Perfect. This second verse also sees variations in the slide lead. In fact, it's a completely different slide lead than the first one, with some elements being recycled and reused. Let's check it out. This slide section in the second verse is actually more of a flipped around version of what we saw before. Instead of starting on the low D string, we're actually starting on the B string with that high idea. This one. Alright, and then we repeat it again. Right into the 10th fret there. So we're using that same idea twice. Now remember, I noted before that idea is actually the most memorable of that section, and to me is most defining of what this verse part is. A very good songwriting ideal. So basically you do that twice and you're reinforcing the motif, and then coming back down to the original range on the D string like this. But here we're just going right on the downbeat for each of those. Okay, so coming up into this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then right into the low, into this nice little quick blip. That's like a quintessential slide lead right there. Flat third to root. Pretty awesome. I love that sound. And then of course a gradual slide up to the 12th once again, and ending on the 12th fret of the E once again, going into the chorus the exact same way we did the first time. Chorus 2 includes the same 3 guitars as chorus 1. This time the 12-string guitar is exactly the same minus the final 4 bars. The wah guitar with the overdrive is exactly the same. The only guitar that's any different in a significant way is the clean guitar with the bubbly sound. The first 3 measures covering the A minor, E minor, and G chords are exactly the same. The change comes in during the D chord. The first chorus had the hammers and pull-offs like this, while this second chorus uses natural harmonics to fill in the gaps. A beautiful icicle cavern you've created there, Mr. Petrucci. Let's see how it's played. And here it is slow. Ready? Make sure you have the gain and the volume up nice, because otherwise these harmonics can get drowned out pretty easily, because anytime you go to the G and the B string, hear how quiet it gets? So you want to make sure you have enough gain on there to compensate for the loss of volume. But we're basically just going from the open D to the A, that's a power chord, going right to here. 7th on the D, 5th on the G, 7th on the B, and 7th on the G. I'm sorry, I said the wrong fret. I will not do that from this point forward, I promise. Now those notes are basically an A, a G, that's almost like West Side Story. There's a place for us. Except it's not, so don't get your panties in a bunch. It's an A, G, F sharp. So we're basically doing a sus4 resolution down to the root, which is D. Okay, so pretty simple. It just sounds so much nicer when you play it with natural harmonics. The return to the A minor is the same as before. Nothing to see here. But immediately following that one, the E minor we see has something incredibly different. Let's compare. Chorus 1 and chorus 2. Almost sounds like a classic Jimi Hendrix inspired lick that straddles the line between being a fill and a flat out solo. You start off that measure by doing a reverse strum, just like that, a gradual strum for that effect, like you're raking all the strings down in reverse, down an E minor chord at the 7th fret. Alright, that starts it off. That's for the first 2 counts. And then on beat 3, you start with this. Okay, now here we go. We're going to do a hammer-on from the 12th to the 14th fret while holding the 12th. Alright, that creates this G major sound, which, by the way, if you put a G major on top of an E, it creates an E minor 7. So this is all E minor 7. Don't get it twisted, alright? And of course the key is, the chord is E minor, right? 2. And we're basically doing that, going into the flatted 7th. And then here we go, same hammer, but it's on the A string. And kind of doing that motion. Coming back up to those, and then sliding here, going down 3, 2, 1 of a G, but we're still on E minor, so it's really 5, 4 to flat 3. So, and then hammering into the 12th fret like this, with a nice grace note. And that's the final beat, by the way. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Kind of a tricky rhythm if you're not used to coming in on that beat 3. To continue it on afterward. Nice and slow. And the wind cries merry. Final difference comes after the G. Once the F chord hits, or the F add 9, we see this deviation. Here's chorus 1. And here's chorus 2. Instead of dwelling on the low 4 strings, E, A, D, G, we are now on the high 4 strings, D, G, B, E, with a very cool chord voicing. And this chord is an F major 9, a proper one at that, and it's played just like this. It actually has a C major chord up on the top, so it's like playing a C major on top of an F. This is also very reminiscent of Steely Dan, if you ever listen to that band. They have tons of chords like that. A C chord or the 5 chord on top of that root note. Alright, so this is basically a C on top of an F, but it's also just a 9th, because you have the root here, watch this, root F, 9th G, C, that's the 5th, and the E, that's the major 7th. And that's also the reason why I said this is a proper F major 9. Watch. Because it has the major 7th and the 9th as it rings out. Alright, a very beautiful sounding chord. The only other big difference in this chorus is how it ends. Let's listen through to how the first chorus ends. That last F chord just fades off into the distance. Now here's what goes down in the second chorus. As you can tell, we have a new guitar coming in, a heavy rhythm guitar chugging on an F power chord, building into the bridge section. We also have an F add 9 arpeggio being played simultaneously by the electric and the 12 string. And that arpeggio is just a simple up the stairs and down the stairs shape, just like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Preparing us to go into the next section. Okay, that's 4 bars of the same exact thing. That's just root F, 5th C, root F, and G, the 9th. Just a very simple idea. Power chord with a 9th on the top. Now after that build up on F, we come yet again into the key of E minor, but this time in a much heavier context. This riff, just like the intro riff, uses some sleight of hand magician type of stuff, because we use the F and B flat chords once again to get back to E, and then eventually use those two chords to get flawlessly into D minor. So I'll explain how that works in just a bit. For now, let's just go over the notes nice and slow. So we start off with an E power chord. Ready? So nothing too technically difficult, but we do have to hit those open strings in very specific spots. All in all, this is just an E minor scale going up in a linear fashion, which is kind of boring, but hey, it works. It almost reminds me of how Pink Floyd does it. Almost sounds like something that might be on the wall, but it's not. So here we go. Got E minor like this, or E5, with a B string ringing out on top of it. That just gives it a lot more space, a lot more spice, actually. And then we come into this, which is an F sharp and a B played together. That's just a very crunchy interval and is used to get to G. Now, that B string has to continuously ring as we play the G. Watch this. E, ring, ring. Hear how it's ringing out? It's creating a G major chord. And then we come right up to the A, palm mute, and then slide into the very last note. Also adding vibrato where necessary as well. So one more time. And it's literally just the E minor scale going up in a linear fashion. The final part ends completely differently. Let me play that for you. E, F sharp, G, F, E flat. So now notice I had to change the string that's rung out in the middle as well. It goes to an F chord, which is the flatted 2. We saw that in the introduction. And it also goes to a B flat, which is the flatted 5th, which we also saw in the introduction. So these two chords, although completely out of the key of E minor, were seen earlier in the intro riff, keeping some familiarity going. Now this actually reminds me of Pull Me Under as well, alright? Or, that happens in the song. So this same exact motion in Peruvian Skies also happens within Pull Me Under. Just thought I would point that out. This is like a Dorian version of Pull Me Under. Actually, Pull Me Under has the exact same Dorian relationship as well. Would you look at that? C sharp to C natural. Unbelievable, right? A lot of these tricks are exactly the same. They're just recycled in different creative ways. That open G string on top of the F also adds some more color. That's that add 9 that we saw before. And then on the B flat, it's a B flat 6, which sounds very consonant as well. So that's why that was chosen over the B. Let me play it with a B on top. Listen to this. Sounds pretty bad if we play it like that, so just use the G string like they intended. Now, the second time through that, the repeat actually goes through a verse, all right, that James LaBrie sings, which leads us into the key of D minor, which I'll explain how that works. Here is the previous riff and the chord progression that begins the solo. The F and B flat, that was the flat 2 and flat 5 of E minor, can now be seen as the flatted 3 and flatted 6 of D minor, since that's where we move to. Since the F is the relative major to D minor, it sets up the B flat to go straight into the new key without feeling awkward. This guitar solo coming up is one of my favorites of John Petrucci's entire career. Long melodic notes, graceful bends, tons of feel, and speed where it counts. And I'll elaborate on that after we get through it. Before getting into the licks, we have to talk about the chord progression, which really is the most important factor for a solo like this. The only reason something can be melodic is because it follows a harmonic progression and remains consistent throughout. Let's listen to the first 4 bars. We start on the 1 chord, which is D minor. Then go to A minor, the minor 5, to C, the flat 7th, and then, hold it, we have a G major here. Now ordinarily, in the key of D minor, we have a G minor, since B flat is in the key signature, and that is the 3rd of the G chord. A G minor would have the notes G, B flat, D. And a G major has the notes G, B, D, which is seen here. Now all of these chords so far come from the key of C major, because all the notes are natural. When you start a progression that comes from C, but start on D, you're creating a Dorian environment, or a minor scale with a natural 6th, just like we've been seeing in the intro and verse riffs. This just happens to be a far more opaque version of the same Dorian idea. And I applaud the band for keeping it so consistent. Let's move forward. That's minor 1, which then goes right to the A minor again, which is the minor 5, to a C again, which is the flat 7, and then we hit a big B flat chord right here to tell us that we are here to have mixed modes. This B flat is the flat 6 of the D minor scale and exists properly within it. It perfectly plays with the Dorian scale because it's the one note that needs to change. The first time through, we had a B natural within the G chord, which is our Dorian natural 6, and this time we have a B flat, which is the flat 6 that exists naturally in the D minor, or D Aeolian scale. Let's wrap this up. Those 4 notes that we just heard are exactly the same as the ones we heard in the chorus earlier. Remember the A minor to the A minor over G, the descending bass line, F sharp, and then resolving on that F, or the flatted 6, which I called. Well, here we're just doing the same thing in D minor. Listen. Over B, and then to a B flat. But obviously in a totally different context and situation. So once again, we're still remaining consistent, but keeping it different and fresh in the process. So let us not forget those chords, as what we play on top is going to go exactly along with the harmonic function we were just talking about, and the melodic function will come from that harmonic function. So here's the first lick played slowly. Ready? Alright, so basically we're starting off with sort of a triplet rhythm, a 16th note rhythm in this compound meter. 3 notes per string, starting on B flat, which is the 3rd fret of the G, going 3, 5, 7, or B flat, C, D. That's just the 1, 2, 3 of the B flat, which by the way, we're on the B flat chord from the previous measure. Okay, so we haven't even started the progression yet before hitting this. So watch this. Then we go up to 5, 6, and 8, which is E, F, and G. So the E is what gives this away. That means we're in a Lydian mode. So that's a sharp 4th. Going up to the 5th, and then basically the 6th. And then that big bend coming up is on the D minor chord. But let's check this out again. So you want to use these exact fingers. So check this out. Pointer, middle, pinky, pointer, middle, ring, and then the big bend right on the top. And right along, and a little bit faster. All alternate picking. If you're not alternate picking, you'll never make it through those notes in time or smoothly at all. The next bend that occurs right on top of that That's basically a melodic note on top of D minor. That's an A, the 5th of D minor. Coming down to the 6th fret of the B string. That's an F. That's the flatted 3rd. So we're basically going from the 5th of the D minor to the 3rd of the D minor, harmonically speaking, just using a bend to get in between there. It's basically Mary Had a Little Lamb on top of a D minor, so not really that complex. But that resolves right into an E, which is also the start of this trill of a half step. Watch this. So you want to have a little bit of a break on that first one, and then just do a series of hammer-ons and pull-offs until you run out of time, basically. And you want to try and feel it out more as like a pulse. Rather than how many times you're doing it, you have to sort of just feel it out and when it ends. Basically right on one of those downbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bow. That's where you want to stop it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, bow. So on that bow is when you want to stop it right there, okay? You basically just release it and hold it out. That's on top of the A minor chord. As we continue on with more tasty melodic bits, very slowly. Alright, so let's unpack that a little bit. We have a 5th fret pickup, alright? So, which goes into the C chord, has this bend on top of it, another whole step bend. This time we're at the 6th fret, coming up to what would be the 8th. So that's a G, which is the 5th of the C. A lot of 5s going on so far, and that will continue on as we move. Then we have this little resolution going down the scale until we resolve down to D. Well, guess what? The D is the 5th of G. So basically we're going from C, the 5th of C, down to the 5th of G. So more parallel 5ths occurring here. Johann Sebastian Bach's Worst Nightmare. And then after that, we come into a basic G major arpeggio. So we resolve onto the note D, which is the 5th, and then come right into an arpeggio. Now this one kind of skips around a little bit, coming to the 10th fret of the A string and going to the 9th of the D, that's G and B. Remember I talked about B natural? Well, here it is coming into full force. And then D, B, skip up the string, and then G, D, and then we resolve back into A for the D minor chord coming back around again. So that's another 5th. Alright, so pretty simple. Let me play it one more time for you. Some of these arpeggio shapes can be very difficult for people who aren't used to playing them. So what you want to make sure you're doing is using all 4 of your fingers, right? And you want to separate the notes, like this. You see how every note is getting its own time in the sun? Rather than playing it like this. Which you don't want to do that. You don't want any of the notes ringing out. Basically, you don't want to play it like a chord. You want to play it like an arpeggio. And that's what makes it sound more unique, more distinct, and honestly a lot cooler in this context. Coming into the second repeat, we roll through this. Feel and a lot of different technique going into that. So let's start over here at that first note here. That's right after the arpeggio. You're going to be on a D minor chord, that's the 5th. And we're basically just going between the 10th fret on those 2 strings. That's basically the Mario interval. Hearing how it sounds like a bunch of coins you just got, a big bonus at the arcade. Pretty cool. That's basically just the 5th and the flatted 3rd of the D minor. Alright, so sliding right into this. Now that's the 13th fret of the B string, also known as the note C, and we're on top of an A minor chord. So that's the flat 3rd. Alright, you want to use a lot of whammy bar vibrato instead of using regular vibrato. So you're going to go. Alright, so you want to make sure you're getting all that wobbly gook in there, right? Then we're going to come over here. You're going to slide into the 12th of the G and then play the 13th. The same exact exact note. So it's another way of sliding into the exact same idea, but adding something else in to make it different. And here you're just going to have some regular vibrato on that. Followed by one of my favorite parts of the entire solo, which is basically sliding in from each note from above. You see that? Because that's where we're at. C, D, and E right there. So make sure you're getting that. It's a little tough to do when you're doing it quickly, so just make sure you're starting a whole step above, a whole step, and then a half step above the last one. And then you'll be able to get it more accurately. But it's basically just playing C, D, and E right up the scale pretty easily. And then we have a half step bend to cap that off. Now this happens on top of the B flat chord, so it's going to sound like this when you play it melodically. Alright, so that's B flat Lydian coming back again. So this is the flat 6 of the D minor that I was talking about, and that's why it sounds so majestic and elegant. And basically you just resolve it back into that D, which is the root note of the key. Also is the third of the B flat, but it sounds really nice. The final section has the most technical display of speed shown thus far, but it's still mighty tasteful. Let's get that slow. So let's get that first blip, the fast blip, out of the way first. I'm going to go over the fingers and the frets to begin. So we have the 10th, 12th, and 14th. Whole steps. Now you can use your pointer, middle, pinky, or pointer, middle, ring for all of this. Actually, I'm going to say use pointer, middle, ring, because then you can use the same fingers for every single one of these blasts. The next blast is 11, 13, 15. Alright, so... And you want to increase the speed gradually, of course, when you're doing something this quick. But at the end of the day, it's going to have to be this quick. Alright, so you got to get it that fast. And then we have to slide right up to the 15th, 17th, and 18th. Alright, so that's 3 blips right in a row. And then right into a half step bend. Now that's the flatted third of the D minor, so basically we're going to be playing around with that repetitively. So... coming down to the E, which is basically a ninth, a very dramatic interval, and then leaping down to A, and then having a nice little pick right here at the 15th fret of the E string, but that's after playing the half step. So it's a very interesting way of going a whole step between those two notes. Check this out. That's a whole step right there. And then right into that final note. Before we change it up and go into this. Now that almost looks like an F major. Alright, now an F major over a D creates a D minor 7. Alright, as we know from Pink Floyd's Another Brick in the Wall. Alright, but here we're just playing it up here. And then we're immediately resolving up to this big bend. Now this is more like just a straight up D minor pentatonic idea. This is on top of the B, which also has the D minor on the top, right? But we're hitting a G as a melodic note. So that means that this could also be part of a G major chord, or a G7, or a G9 in first inversion. Would you believe that? But yeah, just very melodic. Lots of vibrato to it, and then just coming down like this before we hit the final section. Last but not least, we hit the burst speed chaos event of Peruvian Skies, Vanessa's Last Stand. With that quick pickup, so really not too much to say about it. It's the same thing done 3 times, and it starts with a whole step bend, a release, and then a pull off to a double pick. So that's the way you're going to want to do that. Bend, release, pull, pick, pick. Watch that again. And you want to make sure you get that in the exact right spot because you need to do it really quickly. And then that final bend we're going to have up here. You're just doing a classic Leonard Skinner style southern bend there. a double stop bend, and that's up at all the way up to the 20th fret, grabbing the 20th fret of the E, and then using tons of whammy bar as you slide out of it. So here it is again. Okay, and make sure you get that bend all the way up in the air so that Ronnie Van Zant's ghost comes to haunt you, and maybe even play a game of laser tag in your bathroom. Let's get that whole solo slow, starting with that B flat Lydian. Resolve to this beautiful trill. Little vibrato, bend release. Arpeggio, G major. Right into here. Whammy bar vibrato, lots of it. Double. Slide in from above. Nice fast flip. And we got to slide all the way down there. And there you have it. One of John Petrucci's greatest guitar solo moments, in my opinion. Incredible melodic content, some beautiful singable bends. That's the whole thing. Some of John Petrucci's best guitar work is when he plays singable melody lines. I don't know if you've ever seen some video clips, but entire crowds of people are seen and heard chanting entire guitar solos by the man. It's kind of incredible. Even the super fast parts that people don't have a business singing, they sing as well. I know in Italy they tend to do that. Bunch of crazy mofos out there. But anyway, remember when I said that he plays fast where it counts? Well, he plays in 3 very crucial areas during this solo, quickly. He starts the whole thing out at the beginning, right? That's the first fast part, right at the beginning. So he's setting the tone pretty quickly, but then adds a bunch of melodic stuff in between that and holds off until playing fast again, right before the climax, right? I consider this part, the repetitive section, to be the climax, and he's waiting all that time to get to what's good. Alright, so he's not abusing any of his techniques during this solo, which is why I think it's a much more special type of idea. And then of course, the end. He waits until the very end of the solo to do it as well. So beginning, middle, and end. Just like a book. A very short story, but a very Peruvian story, I might say, but a very good one. Ooh yeah, that's a good heavy boy right there. Let's check it out. All of the notes conform with the intro riff that we heard way before this one. Except, we're obviously contending with a lot more dirt this time. So here it is. Ready? Pay attention to where all the mutes are. We're replacing a lot of the single notes that would have been occurring with power chords or inverted power chords, perfect fourths, to give it that added crunch. First measure we have one right here. See that? The open D and G act as the open G melodic note. Okay, and then coming down to second fret of the A and the D string, where before it was just the G going to the D, now it's both of those strings going to both of those strings. That same idea continues on, okay, when we grab this. Check that out. We hit a B flat right in there. F and B flat, that just represents the same exact note. Okay? So those first two parts, you can grab them with whatever fingers you want. I'm using my ring and pinky right here, but you can use just your one finger, ring finger, whatever. It doesn't quite matter. One more time. Now that one's the same exact deal. Instead of just hitting the second fret of the G, we're hitting both the D and the G string. coming down here. A little bit of vibrato on that second fret, coming back down. And don't forget to do the double on that one as well. So you want to do 2 E's, nice heavy chugs, right on the bottom. And then all these are free. So by the time we hit that chromatic disjointed part, we want to do all free notes, not muted. So once again, mute, 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 free. And that continues. Mute, mute. Now here, watch. That one is not muted. So that's the only one where the second fret and fourth on the A don't have those mutes going on. Ready? Same thing here. And of course we hit 2 big E's right at the end to signify that we're done with one of the best riffs in the song. Doesn't last long enough, I don't think. So just like I played right at the end, we have those 2 hits with a little bass ditty in between. That is E minor all the way, heading right into another unique riff that continues this bridge. It's just more of those inverted power chords to keep Lord Chunkenstunk mighty happy. I'll play it slow first. Now the second time around, I'm going to show you a very unique rhythm that is used here. It's basically a 16th note sandwich. You got 8th notes on the outside, 16ths on the inside. Check it out. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. And it obviously changes at the ending there, but I just thought that was a very cool way to apply that rhythm to this section. The guitar keeps going, okay, plays it twice in total. We have some chords in between that we have to talk about. So these inverted power chords, the fourths, they occupy different harmonic values here. We have a G and then a D. That's the flatted third following by the flatted 7th chord, resolving back to the 1. Okay, so G, D, and then the second time we hit this. So we got B followed by an F. Now the B is the 5 chord, which is the normal chord that we would play, and then F is the flatted 2, the more disjointed chord. Now it's surprising here, but the more normal one in this context is actually the F because we've seen it more often. Okay? Remember the F came through this riff. Right? We hit that F as the flatted 2 coming back to E. We never actually hit a B really though. We have never really hit a B chord and accented that along these lines. So it's kind of odd now to see the B, which is usually the normal chord, be the odd man out in this situation. And the F to feel more like we're at home. Kind of cool actually. And then we basically just continue. Same thing. And then this. That's a B going to a B flat, which is basically the devil's interval, which ensures that we're going to have dark times ahead in the nation of Peru. Now, although the guitar repeats this twice, the bass does not play the same thing both times. The first time through, both the guitar and the bass are playing the same riff. On the second time, however, the guitar keeps playing the riff while the bass moves on to the next part, which sounds like this. Together they create some cool, crunchy textures between the two riffs. And there is actually a proper harmony that occurs here, starting with the first chromatic line. The first note is B, and the guitar on top is playing the E power chord. Next, the bass plays B flat, while the guitar plays a G5 power chord. which in total gives us the notes B flat, D, and G, which could be considered a B flat 6 or a G minor in first inversion. Either way, a very strange chord to put in this setting. The final bass note A is simply the 5th of a D5 power chord, which we saw within the guitar part. So A is on the bottom, and boom, that D5 power chord is on top. And here's what that sounds like in this sort of condensed version. Watch. Very interesting way. That bass note chromatic line with the chords up top in the guitar really give it some interesting texture. This then continues on with the next bar being the note D and the guitar chord on top being the E. This is basically an E minor 7 with a D in the bass, or a third inversion E minor 7th chord. After that, the bass moves chromatically down to C sharp, while the guitar plays a B power chord on top. That gives us the notes C sharp, F sharp, and B, which is a condensed C sharp minor 11th chord, having the 4th and the flatted 7th up top. And the final chord is just an F power chord with a C on the bottom, which is basically just a 5th. And here's what those sound like. Check this out. Well, once again, a lot of very interesting sounds. Almost sounds like a fusion album at this point. With that third inversion, E minor 7th, a C sharp minor 11th, and an F power chord in second inversion, this sounds more like something you'd hear from Mahavishnu Orchestra or some kind of fusion outfit. Very, very jazzy, if I must say so. Very unique. So this part winds up joining in after the bass plays through it one time. And here it is. I'll play it slowly for you. It just mirrors the exact part. The exact same rhythm that we saw before. The 16th notes sandwiched between the 8ths. 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3. Even though the drums are more syncopated during this part, the guitar basically follows the same exact rhythm. And like I said, it's exactly the same as the bass. Nothing else to really say about this. 7, 6, 5, 10, 9, 8. Boom, bam, bigga boom, we're done, going, we're moving on here. This section also sees the introduction of a unique synth line. It's basically playing a repetitive line using a pretty ambiguous arpeggio pattern. This assures that it doesn't get in the way of the more chaotic movements in the guitar and bass parts. This is also the first time that we can say video game Sharinian, a recurring character throughout this album and the A Change of Seasons song, because Derek Sharinian really loves these 90s retro gaming ideas. His keyboards sound like video games. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Next we have some cool natural harmonics that make up yet another unique riff to add on to this bridge. There are some very interesting sounds being embraced here, especially with the harmonics, so let's break those down. Just like every other riff in this bridge, we're starting on an E power chord. A lot of that E going on. A very, very, very cool riff, kind of just comes out of nowhere, but embracing a lot of demonic energy and very dissonant tones, especially with that E in the tritone. Now, we're hitting a regular E power chord, which is par for the course, and I explained that already. The one chord of Peruvian Skies, as it's been the entire time. But check this out. These harmonics ranging from the 2nd fret, just barely touching the 2nd fret and the 3rd fret, basically on the border right here. And then going to the 3rd fret, so you get those 2 tones. Bam, bam, bam. Okay, so that's basically the note F sharp going down to the note D. Now, in the context of E, that's the 9th and the flatted 7th. So already some very interesting tonality. After that, we're still on the 3rd fret, but we're right on the border of the 3rd and the 4th fret. Okay? Then we still have 2 more notes to cover from the 4th fret to the 5th fret harmonic. See that? We're basically playing an entire E9 arpeggio. And you gotta make sure you're getting into the exact position there, otherwise you're not gonna get the right tones. And it winds up sounding so cool when you hit them in the exact spot, because you're literally playing this. And then right into that tritone. So from an E9 to an E with a flatted 5th. Then in between, we hit these little inverted power chords just like we always do. But here we're sliding into the 2nd of the D and the A, which is an E going to a D, 1 to flat 7. There's nothing weird about that. Then the 2nd time, we're going like this. Sliding into the 9th and the 9th of the D and the G. That's just an E, a regular ass E power chord, but up in a higher octave, and then sliding with that nice little pentatonic descending line from 7/5 to 7. So those first 2 again. E to D. E, pentatonic. We then repeat this. E, D once again. And the final one, watch. Big old trill going from E to the 6th fret B flat. Now this is more like an air raid horn or some kind of crazy siren that's going off the charts here to warn us of some impending emergency event. Alright, that's basically an E to a B flat. That's a tritone. It's the exact same thing that we've been hitting over here. Okay, just to show you the comparison between the two. Overall, a very, very, very underrated riff, I'll have to say. And of course, Derek Sherinian can't just leave this part alone. He's got to make it even cooler. He's hitting a melodic note on top, which is a G sharp. Now on top of an E, that's totally fine because that's the major 3rd. However, we're hitting an E9 and a flatted 5th at the same time. Alright, so that G sharp is just adding in a major tonality instead of a minor one. Pretty awesome, man. And this is actually the Charlie Brown interval. Alright, just in a different key. So, if you ever wanted to know what that chord was, it's an E9 with a flatted 5th. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Wow, that's just a straight up E minor blues line. Let's get into it real quick. And by quickly, I mean slowly. Here we go. Very simple. Goes a total of 4 times. No variation. A very nice break from some of the complexities we've been seeing throughout this, and we just get to groove and vibe out for a little while. It's very nice, and it's literally about as simple as it can get. It's an E minor blues scale descending. Look, E, D, B, B flat, A to E again. That's basically root, flat 7, 5, flat 5, 4. It's just the scale. Then you hit the E again and slide up to the flat 7th. continue down, and then resolve onto the flatted third. Alright, so you can see this as E minor 7 with a bluesy element. Awesome sound. Ready? Watch one more time. And really, I think the only thing technical that I can say about this is make sure you're sliding in to those 2 frets there. The 7th fret right at the beginning, and then the 5th fret right in the middle. That's going to tie together the articulation. Slide. Boom, slide. Slide. You got to get in the slide in right on that gator there. You don't want to get killed by the alligator. There are 2 things that happen during this blues section that help it to build even further. Remember, 4 times repeating a riff is a lot for Dream Theater, so of course the other members of the band have to do something different to make it more interesting, namely in the drums and the keyboards. Let's check out the drums first. The first groove is keeping the thrashy snare on every single beat, but after the second repeat, Portnoy plays this simple snare fill and gets us to a second groove. This, as opposed to the first groove, feels a lot like a bit of a release. And the keys do something even more simple to make this more interesting. And it's as simple as playing the same thing up the octave. Here's the first time through. And here's the 3rd and 4th time through. It literally elevates that riff to higher heights. The final chorus differentiates itself in 3 different ways. The first way being that the guitar is fully heavy the entire time, alright, as well as other elements of the orchestration as well. Heavy drums, heavy bass, and a heavy organ from Derek. The second difference is that we are in a 3/4 timing. 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Instead of a slow 6/8 timing like we had before. And the third difference is within James LaBrie's vocal part. We have a bit of a flipperoo going on here. Earlier on in the song, the low part was actually the main melody. Under Peruvian skies. And the harmony was the high part. Under Peruvian skies. Here, the high part is now the main melody, and the low part is the harmony. Under Peruvian skies, Vanessa regretfully waits. That, along with this change in the guitar part we're about to listen to, keep this idea fresh and less boring. Alright? Takes a similar thing we've heard already and makes it into an entirely different idea to take us to the end of the song. Let's hear what's going on with this guitar part all the way through until, well, the last riff. The first part is all power chords, and they go like this. A to E, same functions. G with that open voicing, and then D with that nice crunchy voicing. Back to A, 3, 1, 2, 3, E, then G to that F, which then slides up into a completely different part. Following those power chords, we hit a more rhythmic section with higher power chord voicings, or sort of, you'll see what I mean in a second, and 16th notes in between. And they kind of go like this, starting with an A up top, A over G, A over F sharp, and then of course a build up on F to get us out of it. Now let's look at those voicings here. We have the 7th, 9th, and 10th fret to basically make an A power chord up high. This is also, I believe, the beginning of the Beavis and Butthead soundtrack, or the Beavis and Butthead title theme. So I think that's kind of funny, but that's obviously not what it is. But with 16th notes in between, like this. 1, 2, and a 3, and a 1, 2, and a 3, and a repeating all the way until the end. Now the second voicing is way more tricky, and actually took me a little bit to try and hear what was going on. I saw him play it live like this, so I'm pretty sure this is what's going on. So we have the 5th fret, so we're dropping this down a whole step. We have this one up here at the 9th fret, so we've got to stretch all the way with pointer and pinky from 5 to 9. And then we're also going to grab this, the 5th fret of the E string up top. So you get those high notes right up, bringing up above, just like you had on the first one. But you have all of those other intervals going lower as well. So a very, very tricky part, but not really that hard to play if you can get your pointer barred across all those strings, and then just mute the B string. Alright, so you're basically playing these 3 notes. Okay, and that represents your A7. Then we move down to F sharp, which is at the 4th fret of this D string, skipping the G to go up to the 5th fret of the B, and then to the 5th fret of the high E. And that gets you that F sharp minor 7 flat 5, coming right down to F, which is a regular old power chord, building up the suspense until we finally hit the last riff of the song. That final riff in the song brings us back to the first riff of the song, or I should say the rehash of the intro that we saw during the bridge. And it goes like this. We have a few less mutes involved as well, so pay attention to that. Check this out. Goes on for a total of 4 times instead of 2 like we saw before. So coming back to the idea of these mutes, there's only one measure that we mute the 2nd and 4th fret on the A string, which is a lot different than what we saw earlier. We were basically muting every single one but one. Okay, this time it's kind of the opposite. We're alternating basically. So we're going like this, watch. That's free, then this is muted. It's only muted on that measure and that measure alone where we go to the A. Otherwise, it's all free. And like I said, 4 times instead of 2. Now there's a reason why we do it 4 times. Since we have an extra 2 times at the end to account for, we're going to have to get another guitar out to make this last part more interesting. It's basically a double, but it's not really a double, because we're using a 7-string guitar to increase the range of what is possible in this world. So check that out. So I'll admit this 7-string took me by surprise. I was not expecting to hear a low B string coming in on that double. I thought it was just another 6-string guitar to make it extra beefy, but no, we got lower strings that we have to contend with. It uses all of the same notes as the 6-string riff, but utilizes the low B string where applicable, and I'll show you where that happens. So as we compare the two, you'll see what I mean. So we got the first E power chord. Nothing special. That's exactly the same. And then right into this. That's the immediate difference. Usually we hit this on the 2nd and 4th fret of that A string, but instead here we're going all the way down to the B string. Open 2. Alright, so far we have into a G, nothing special there, right down to an E, and then a B flat. So if anything, the 7-string makes the riff more normal, because we're not using those inverted fourths to get that heavy sound. Instead, we're playing regular power chords. Pretty cool. And this idea continues on through the next part, where we palm mute the open and the 2, which is the B and C sharp. But here, we got to do something that's a little bit different. To account for this, that A that we saw up top, we got to hit the E and A string open like that. So super crunchy. It almost doesn't even sound like it really sounds like a chord at all, or something that a professional guitar player would play. That sounds like something somebody that just got the guitar on the first day would play. Well, check out what I can do. I can play 2 strings at the same time. Isn't it so heavy and cool? It's not actually that cool, because it does sound kind of stupid. But I guess when John Petrucci's doing it here, he knows exactly what he's doing, so he makes it cool. Alright? So that E and A is the same as E and A, which was right up at the top. Ready? As opposed to, which that 3rd and 2nd fret stay exactly the same. So as you can see, some of the notes are doubled, others are not. Others are played down the octave when the 7-string comes into play. The only other part where the 7-string comes into play is on the chromatic disjointed part. So basically we're going like this. Alright, so did you see that low part? Let me play it for you again. That's the exact same thing as this, except it's using the low B string. Alright, so once again on this entire riff, that goes on to repeat a 2nd time, and then on that very last one, it hits 2 E's right in a row, ba ba, to end the entire song. And with the end of the song comes the end of this tutorial and analysis. This has been a fun one. I really enjoyed doing this song. Peruvian Skies by Dream Theater, track 3 on Falling into Infinity. Glorious song. Lovely textures, a lot of atmosphere. I think we might have had maybe like 7 or 8 different layers of atmosphere as we built along this song. And what's really cool about this track that I like the most about it is that it starts off clean and atmospheric, stays that way for the first half, and then the second half is totally rockified. The whole thing is power chords, heavy guitars, distortion, solos, and really cool riffs. And even the final chorus keeps with that theme. So I thought that was a really nice touch on the part of the band. Thank you everyone for watching. If you'd like to further support the channel, go to www.subscribestar.com/RomanOvaMusic. You can pledge any amount of money you want per month. That helps keep this channel going. The $20 option will get you access to the RomanOva Guitar Gym, which is basically a set of exclusive videos that I make just for that price point. You can also leave a tip on my PayPal tip jar. That's just for anybody that's passing by. Hey, I like what you're doing. I'm going to put a little tip in the tip jar, right? That can be anything. That's a one-time donation. Other than that, just like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment on things. I want to hear what you have to say about what I'm doing, and I will most likely respond. I don't respond to everything, but I try to get to what I can get to. Alright everybody, thanks a lot for coming along this journey, and I'll see you on the next one, which, if you're familiar with the album, you know what it is. If not, then you'll just have to find out when I get on next time. Goodbye everybody.